Hi crafters, this is Raquel with Paints and Glitter, and today I'm coming to you with a tutorial using the beautiful bow box from Tonic Studios. I'm going to share with you how I'm going to assemble this box, and in a moment you're going to see a picture on your screen sharing with you the number of pieces that you can cut out of the base paper, which you should cut out of the heaviest cardstock that you have. I have used 110 pound or 300 GSM for this foundation. It's all going to be in the same color, which is white. And what I'm going to do for these two pieces here, which will create the little insert box, is that I'm going to fold all of the tabs that score with the die as mountain folds, and I'm going to burnish those. So using that one die, I cut out two pieces of this paper, and then I'm applying adhesive to the square portion. This will layer, and what you want to do is make sure that the outer tabs face opposing each other, and of course this is going to create a box, so it'll be pretty self-explanatory, but you can definitely use the burnished little folds to guide you as to your placement of the square on top of the square. And here on the corner you're going to see all of the little numbers that I made in white indicate the foundation pieces that you can cut as far as how many you will need to create this box. And I hope that makes it a little bit easier as you watch the video. You can pause it, cut out all the pieces, and then follow along if you like. Now you're also going to see that I'm using Nuvo Deluxe Adhesive to supplement the dry tape that I used on the corners of the box and all of the flaps and everything. And that's because you want to create a bond between your papers. So I highly recommend the wet adhesive to add one piece of paper onto the other. And you can see how easily the little corners match, but you definitely want to make sure that for any kind of square or rectangular box that you get a 90-degree angle when you're creating those little corners, and just apply pressure, take your time, and allow it to dry before you add anything else. This video is going to be a little tiny bit sped up, but I decided to go ahead and not make the video too fast because I realize that sometimes the video goes so fast that you might miss something. So I just patiently went ahead and added all those four corners, one to the other, and that created the foundation. Now this little box is going to insert into the beautiful shaped box, which is quite unique. So because you're going to be pulling this out, and the first thing that you see is actually the interior portion, then what I did is that I cut out the little rectangular panels, and you see those in the picture as a number 4. And that's because, yes, you do cut out 4 pieces for the interior. It's up to you if you want to cut out another 4 for the exterior. Just be mindful of the weight of the paper that you're using because it might be too snug of a fit. So do a dry run with this before you decide on decorating the outer portion. Now, as you may have seen in the picture, you do need to cut out these other pieces. And again, this is the foundation, so I cut it all out in white. And you see that there are 3 larger rectangles and 2 smaller rectangles, 2 of the shapes that are trapezoids, 2 of these little triangles, and 1 of the little flaps that just folds right down in the middle. So what I did using the decorative portion of these dies, as you see here, is that I went ahead and cut out the red mirror cardstock as well as the coral cardstock that I'm using in this project, and that allowed me to layer this beautifully. Now, because it was my first time decorating this box, what I did was that I started decorating only certain panels and then setting them aside to allow them to dry. But as you see here, you can use 2 dies of the layering dies to create that really beautiful decorative portion. And of course, when you use the mirror cardstock, it makes it stand out a little bit more, but you definitely could cut this out of any cardstock and use your Nuvo mousse or your glitters, anything like that, and then go ahead and decorate it Here I've gone ahead and placed those little matching panels right on top of the trapezoid shape, and I'm going to set them aside and allow them to dry once I have those assembled. Then with this piece here, which is one of the larger rectangles, what you're going to need are these two little shapes. I stacked them one on top of the other and use the largest one on the base. That's very important. Make sure that you flip this over facing the hole toward the inner portion of your cardstock, and using the low tack adhesive that you can now pick up from Tonic Studios, you can place that right on top and make sure it's centered. Then you can run this through your die cutting machine. This is going to create the little hole that's going to allow you to then close the box using the little tab. Now you're going to do the same thing with the smaller one. Again, there's the little notch that's going to cut out, and I did decorate my paper ahead of time. I didn't have to, but if you want to, all you have to do is cut it out of the coral color paper, making sure again that the little hole faces the inner part of your die cut. Use the low tack adhesive and then cut this out so that they can match one another. Here you see me removing that, and my paper is nice and safe. It didn't ruin it, and now you can tell how easily those two match together. All I have to do is place my adhesive, line them up again, and there they match beautifully. Now I just had to flip that over and burnish the folds so that I can continue assembling this box. Now moving on, with the same piece that I had already cut out, I'm going to attach this now to the two little triangles that I had already decorated. And I am supplementing everything with the wet glue, if I haven't already mentioned that, because I want my box to be nice and sturdy and I don't want it to fall apart. Now, one thing that I'm going to mention regarding this project is that it has a lot of little very pointy features to it, and that's kind of the uniqueness of this box. So you want to make sure that all of those little pointy edges adhere fully. So give yourself time to allow that to dry. That way, if you need to touch it up with a little bit of glue here and there, you can do so, because it's going to be very important as to the finished product. And here's how that looks. You're going to flip it over and take one of the smaller rectangles that you cut, and it's up to you whether you want to decorate this little panel as well. I left this with just the coral cardstock, but you can definitely use that other decorative portion throughout the entire box. And you can definitely also decorate the interior portion of this box if you want to. That's totally up to you. This was my first time creating it, so I just kept it quite simple. But all of the folds are going to be mountain folds, so that's pretty easy. And this is going to now attach to the side that does not have the notch. So I just flipped it over and try to make sure to match both corners first before I apply pressure. And if you are using mirror cardstock, I do recommend that you burnish from the inside. That way you don't run the risk of having your tool or whatever you're using to burnish catch onto that mirror cardstock and tear it. So that's just another little tip that I'll give you. And here on the corners, you want to make sure you match those up precisely before you apply pressure. If you see there, I'm holding that really nice and taut, and then I go ahead and burnish that. Now the little tab that was left from that smaller rectangle, this will be a valley fold. So you're going to fold that up, then match up the rectangular portion of that strip, and that is the portion that you're going to use to adhere to the outer side of that tab. So you can go ahead and place your adhesive there, match up that little rectangle, and apply pressure. And this is going to allow you to attach this bit to the other portion of the box to create your lid. And I did set that aside to move on to the rest, but we'll come back to it. Now you're going to use the rest of the pieces that you cut out. It's the 2 trapezoids, 2 of the rectangles that have only 2 tabs, and then the smaller rectangle that has 4 tabs. You can go ahead and fold all of these first, burnish them with your bone folder if you have one, or just a nice blunt tool. And as you can tell, it's heavyweight cardstock, so it takes a minute for me to be able to fold that because I don't have strong hands. But that's where the tools, they make it much easier. So I'm setting some of those aside and just grabbing one of them, one of the rectangles that has the 2 tabs. Go ahead and place adhesive along one of the tabs, and then grab a trapezoid that you decorated, and that's going to match up perfectly on that edge. And just patiently place it on there, and then go ahead and burnish. And you're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Once you have those 2 together, you can flip it over and burnish again. That way you don't ruin your paper if you decided to decorate it ahead of time. And here you're going to match up the smaller rectangle, the one that has the 4 tabs, and that's going to be placed right where the little trapezoids kind of point up. You're going to match that, and that's going to extend this portion of the box, and it's also going to match up with the 2 sides so that you can start closing this portion. So you can apply your glue there and match up your little corners, and you start seeing this take shape. But what I want to stress in this video is that you want to make sure that all of the little corners match perfectly. So don't rush through this, because if you do, it's going to create gaps in the little corners, and you definitely don't want that when you're making a 3D box or just a 3D project. You want it to be nice and professional looking when it's done. So that's where patience comes in. The videos are often sped up, and I think it gives sometimes a false sense of how easy, you know, they come together. And it's not difficult at all. It just does take patience to make sure that you get a final product that's nice and pretty. So here, the next little rectangle, that's the remaining one, has the 2 side tabs. That's going to match up with the folded tab there. And that's going to complete this portion of this box. And of course, as I said before, you can decorate these panels ahead of time if you want to. It was my first go around creating this box, so I decided to decorate some of them after the fact. But here you're going to see how this closes, and I did do a dry run using that little square box. I wanted to see what that was going to look like, and I placed it inside, kind of fiddled around with it just to see, well, how much pressure should I add to those folds and all that good stuff. It's something that I recommend you do, especially if you're prone to decorating a lot and cutting a bunch of little panels. This might save you from using up a lot of your paper if you then decide that it won't fit because of the decorative panels. So this will close nicely now by just adhering the 2 side portions right onto those trapezoid shapes. And of course you want to burnish. And there's that finished portion here. That's where the little square box is going to slide right in. And now we're going to add the lid to this. So those little triangles that I hadn't yet fully adhered, I went ahead and removed the lining of that adhesive and placed a little more glue there, because that does need to glue down very nicely and onto that rectangular strip. So make sure you apply some good pressure there, that it all lines up perfectly, and allow that some time to dry. Now I'm adding my little wet adhesive to the finished portion of the box, and these 2 are going to match perfectly here, because this is going to create the lid. You see there where I matched it up? And now I'm decorating the back. Now you may notice that this is embossed. All I did was that I took the die that creates that gorgeous rose and I ran it through my die cutting machine with that coral cardstock using my embossing mat rather than the cutting mat. And that way I was able to emboss right into the paper. And finally I just adhered the last little decorative rectangle on the bottom here. And that finishes this portion. And on the front I did the same thing. I had dry embossed the paper and then added it to decorate the front of the box. Now, where you see that little notch, you want to make sure that you can put the little tab that's going to feed through. So here, just make sure you only apply adhesive to the thinnest portion of that tab, and then you can place the square box inside and pull that all the way through. That's going to allow you to close this, and using the little strip that you cut out that looks like a little band-aid, just put glue on the two outer portions only. Place it right on top of that strip, and that way you know exactly where that's going to feed through. And there you have the closure. And of course you want to decorate it with the gorgeous bow included in this kit. I did cut it out using the coral paper, and the little tail portions I cut out twice, once with the mirror cardstock, once with the coral paper, and then I did use the layering piece that I cut out with the decorative paper. I love this little bow, and I think I'm going to be using it quite frequently. So I also used a bone folder, and all I'm doing here is burnishing that paper to create that curve that helps break down the fibers of the paper, so that way you don't get any dents in your bow. Using hot glue, you can press those little portions together that have the little tabs there. And that's the beginning of your bow. So using those two pieces, just overlap them, apply a little bit of pressure with your glue, and then you can cover that up and make it really pretty. I use the little tab portion here, or that little strip that cuts out, with mirror cardstock. I applied hot glue and adhered it onto the back there. And then I did take the little tail portion of the bow, and I try to make sure that it matched the width of the box before I adhered it. And once that was all put together, I did put a dollop of hot glue and added the bow to the front of this box, and that completes this gorgeous bow box. You can definitely keep adding to it if you want. There are the other little portions here that you see me placing inside that cuts out with the smallest rectangular die in the set, and you can add little tabs to that as well depending on how you intend to use it. I filled this one up with candies and gave it away. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave me a comment and a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new, and I hope to see you in my next video. And as I always say, I hope that you can be inspired and be blessed. And I thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.